First, I'd like to talk about how coding, which seems pretty straightforward at first, can be really confusing and difficult. And difficulty I encounter is was when I have to be objective. I was being really subjective without not realizing. And the reason is that even though I understand that people have different way of using words, I had to rely on my understanding of words to code because I can ask questions to the people who actually answered the survey. And that created disagreement on whether certain words is whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic. For example, the word job I associate with more money aspect, particularly at that moment, rather than long term. So I call it as extrinsic. However, the way I understand career, for example, career is associated with long-term interest, which is aspect of money and own interest. And how can I say this? Some people use job and career in the same way. However, I see in a different way. So that was the disagreement I had with other peers. And also, some words is really confusing such a better future because I think that it can fall in anywhere in the spectrum, intrinsic or extrinsic, depends on reason. For example, if someone saying that's better future is better income, then I see it as intrinsic. But if someone is like learning better myself is a better future, then it's going to be extrinsic. So that was also hard words to have agreement on. And after coding, I randomly selected 10 samples from different classes. And out of 10 samples, I divided in two categories, intrinsic and mostly intrinsic. This is the one category. The other one is extrinsic and mostly extrinsic. The reason I put extrinsic and mostly extrinsic in the same category and I didn't divide it is because it is hard to categorize people in just in intrinsic or extrinsic, since most of the people are mixture. And for example, when I categorize a sample as intrinsic, those people tend to have reason as thrive on knowledge or to learn. And mostly intrinsic tend to have the reason to be better myself and to get a career. An example of extrinsic people is to get a good job, to get benefits that come along with the good job. An example of most extrinsic is to pursue a career and job with salary and benefits. Since I picked randomly and also the sample size was really small, I was afraid I'm not going to see any tendency. However, I could see some interesting finding. For example, intrinsic people tend to have higher GPA such as over 3.0. However, extrinsic and most extrinsic people tend to have, in my sample, have GPA below 3.0. And also, most intrinsic people are less distracted during the class, and extrinsic people tend to do more doodle and use social media during the class. And also, intrinsic people prefer demanding class than easier class and prefer essay writing over multiple choice. And that was different in the extrinsic people. And those are the findings I wasn't expecting, but I could see why that was. And I found something interesting. For example, extrinsic people rate higher for support from their family and friends. And also they use more frequently CUNY first, the Guardian email, and e-portfolio. I found this interesting because some research shows that people who are connected to those college email tend to have higher GPA, but in this case, that's not the case. And so I'm assuming if extrinsic people use those LaGuardia emailed CUNY first to just the sake of seeking a connection. And also, extrinsic demonstrate extrinsic people rate higher in motivation, importance of external environment to do well in the class. And this made me question of if they're actually answering questions or just circling numbers to finish survey fast, because that was the last page of the survey. And this made me realize the difficulty of assessing the reliability of survey and importance of how structure the survey in the future. So my next step is to see the trends I saw in my exploration of this sample actually applies to the full sample we collected.